Okay, so again, maybe just hand up to let me know that you can see the front page there. Yep, perfect. Okay, wonderful. So there's some of our fantastic scholars from previous years. Okay, I'd like to begin with an acknowledgement of country. Some of you might know the office of our foundation sits on Wurundjeri country, and we would like to warmly acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that we work on, but also the many lands that you are all gathered on across Australia. So we'd like to pay our respects to Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and indeed all First Nations people and elders past and present. So just a quick little bit of housekeeping. This is the first of two webinars. So there is an opportunity to come to a second webinar in early June on the 4th, which will drill down a little bit more into the scholarship application process itself. This is a general overview, so we will talk a little bit about the application process, but it's more general than the second webinar. Just a reminder, everyone, if you could mute your microphones, and also in terms of questions in the chat, we have a very large number of participants, so it will get a bit wild if we're not careful in the chat. So if you could just keep your questions to the content that we're looking at the time, and we'll stop periodically just to work through any questions as we need to. Okay, so I'd like to begin with this quote from General Sir John Monash. "The privilege of education carries great responsibilities. It is given not for individual benefit alone, but to befit persons for the higher duties of citizenship and for roles of leadership in all fields to make Australia great." That's a really important quote because it frames the way we think about the scholarship and the way we work at the foundation. The John Monash Foundation was established around 20 years ago, and it's absolutely built on that philosophy of John Monash himself, that the education, high level of education that we strive to attain is there in order to contribute positively to the country. The other important aspect about this quote and about Sir John Monash, of course, is, well, he was a remarkable Australian, but he was a brilliant, brilliant leader. He was exceptional, of course, during the Great War, and then returned to Australia, and in civic life, he made a brilliant contribution to our education, our engineering, and civic life more generally. So leadership is a key aspect of the scholarship, and it's leadership in order to benefit Australia, as John Monash himself did. Okay, so a bit about the scholarship. It's an Australian scholarship. It's for run by Australians. John Monash was an Australian, and it's for anyone in Australia, wherever you happen to be. It's open to any discipline. So we have people in public policy, in law. We also have filmmakers and composers. We have microbiologists. We have experts in AI. So it's a very, very broad field, any discipline. There's no age limit to applying, which means that often what we find is we have people that are sometimes early to mid-career applicants. They've graduated successfully from university, and they've done a stint in their career, and they're looking somehow to build their capacity and their leadership. A key point about this is that on this scholarship you can go to any university in the world, and we encourage you to think really, really broadly about what's available. The key thing is the university, is the program that you're interested in relevant to your program and what you foresee as your impact? Another big aspect of the scholarship is that it gives you access to an amazing network, the international network, 264 scholars. And I'll say hi to Matt now because I can actually see you on the screen, which is fantastic. So we'll hear from you a little bit later on. So we have our scholars, but we also have an exceptional board. We have really strong, positive connections with the corporate sector, with academia, and with government as well. And the final thing is, and you'll hear more about this, as a John Monash Scholar, you receive ongoing career support and professional development through the Leadership Academy. Okay, quickly to eligibility. This is all on our website, of course. So it's for people who have Australian citizenship. You need to have completed an undergraduate degree at least from an Australian university or be about to complete. So, for example, say you're in your final year of your bachelor's degree, that's fine, you can apply, but you need to have completed that degree by the end of this year. You need to be thinking about undertaking full-time postgrad study overseas next year. So we have a lot of inquiries from people who've already got into programs this year and they're looking at the scholarship. This is not an option. This is for people who are looking to start next year. Now, what this means is that the timelines, of course, are a little bit our timelines don't line up with the academic timelines overseas, which is fine, and there's no need for that to be the case. It means that you're highly likely that you wouldn't have applied for your chosen program at this point or by the time application's closed. So you don't need to have been accepted into the program, and in fact, it's unlikely that will have been the case. That's absolutely fine. And one of the key things also is that you need to be able to demonstrate that the program that you want to do at the university that you're choosing is the best one for you in order to drive your career in a positive impact. So try and think broadly about this. There can be a tendency to go for the obvious places, the big Ivy League institutions in the US or Oxbridge, but some of our really interesting proposals have come from people that are doing something quite different. So I'll give you an example. We had a scholar a couple of years ago who wanted to do a Masters of Disaster Recovery. And she actually chose to go to the University of Canterbury in Christchurch, New Zealand. It was just the perfect place for her because there's a big centre of excellence there around earthquake recovery, earthquake management, but also recovery. So perfect location for her. Okay. So what does the scholarship cover? Well, first of all, you receive a contribution towards your tuition, your overseas tuition, your living expenses, and all sorts of other study-related expenses. So this could even be conference fees, that kind of thing. That's $80,000 a year for up to 3 years. So if you're doing a 1-year master's, you would get 80,000, 2-year master's, 160, of course, and the maximum is 3 years, and that would be for a PhD. So with that in mind, you need to think about a couple of things there, and I'll throw to Paul in a few moments, but with a PhD, it's unlikely that the 3 years funding will cover all years, usually 4 or sometimes 5 years of a PhD. And the other thing that you need to consider is the cost of the institutions that you're going to, noting that this is a contribution, but how are you going to manage the shortfall or whatever else you need to put in there. So we also offer support with a return flight. For successful scholars, we provide support into the proposed program, so we can help with writing references, that kind of thing. We give advice on what other sources of funding are available out there. And of course, lifelong membership to the Leadership Academy. So Paul Ramage, if you're there, is there anything else you wanted to add to that?
No, thank you, Anna. I think that's... Can everybody hear me, by the way? Okay, great. No, that summary is excellent. We are starting to get some excellent questions also going up in the chat room. So thank you to everybody, and I'd encourage you, if you have a question, please post it. But I think the summary is really good. I will just mention, Anna, one question has been about does it have to be an overseas university? And we do want to reinforce the fact that, yes, it does have to be an overseas university. It's a distinctive aspect of a John Monash scholarship that you leave Australia, you study overseas, you get best practice skills, and hopefully you return to Australia as somebody who can make a really positive impact in our country. So, no, I'm happy with progress, and I think the benefit of being here, if you're logged on, is to put your questions as Anna continues to work through the slide deck. So thank you, Anna.
Thanks, Paul. That's great. Okay. So still on the benefits of the scholarship, we do have a couple of opportunities with specific universities, and you can see them there on the screen. So King's College offers an additional £5,000 bursary, i.e. University of Madrid provides a fee waiver. Cranfield University in the UK provides a fee waiver for master's programs. University of Groningen in the Netherlands provides a full fee waiver for PhDs, and Weizmann Institute of Science offers a full fee waiver for PhDs. So some other things for you to think about there. And I think actually before we jump to the Academy, if there's someone, either Paul or Karen, if it might be a good time now to work through the chat, if one of you wants to sort of work through those questions, and I'll sort of look at answering as best I can.
Yes, Hannah, some of the themes coming up are about the timing of applications. So if I'm completing my undergraduate degree this year, can I apply for a scholarship for next year?
Yeah, yeah. And that's absolutely fine. So you would apply in this application round if you are finishing your undergraduate degree this year. The other
another one, Anna, is I'm going to be overseas during the application process, and possibly during a potential interview process. Can I apply while I'm overseas? And if I'm successful, could I be interviewed from overseas?
Yes. So question is yes to both of those. So with the we offer virtual interviews for people overseas at both rounds. So yeah, that is definitely an option for you.
Final one at this point, Anna, is I'm an Australian citizen, but I've done my study overseas. I haven't done any education in Australia. Can I apply?
Yeah, look, unfortunately, the answer to that is that it is for people that have completed a degree at an Australian university.
Yeah, and I think we can then pick up some more questions and answers as you progress, Anna.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Paul. That's great. Okay, so we might move to Karen McConalogue now, our wonderful colleague who looks after the John Monash Foundation Leadership Academy. Is that the slide you're all seeing there?
It is. That's the one, Anna.
Fantastic. Thanks. Hi, Karen.
Thank you, Anna. Yeah, so one of the fantastic things about the General Sir John Monash Foundation is the relationship that we have with our scholars doesn't stop when the educational piece is over. So we are a foundation that's all about supporting our scholars to achieve their leadership ambitions and their goals, and we put support in place for those scholars that want it for the rest of their career. So we start with the scholars when they're newly awarded with Foundations of Leadership programs. It helps them bond as a cohort before they go out overseas. We're in the process now of revitalising and building the academy, and we will be putting in place additional leadership programs for scholars in the field, and far more focus on the return to Australia, what we're calling the landing pad. But there'll be ongoing support, and that comes in the form of professional development and leadership development programs, as well as networking, mentoring, coaching, etc. So there's a lot of support. We also have a number of big events that we run through the academy. We have a leadership series, which is just about to launch next week, which will be a national program of leaders from around the country in conversation with some of our scholars, being that we will be the interviewers for those. So that's very exciting. So watch our social medias. You'll see you'll see all that coming up in our socials. And we also have a symposium, which we hold every 2 years, a global symposium, which is an opportunity for the scholars all around the world and all around Australia to come together. So there's lots of things on offer through the Leadership Academy. And Julia Gillard is our patron. That's a fantastic picture of Julia there. We also have a very eminent advisory board that oversees the academy. Thank you, Anna.
Thanks, Karen. That's fantastic. If there are any questions about the Leadership Academy, just feel free again to pop them in the chat, and we might pick them up as we go along. Okay, so I'm going to move now to the nuts and bolts of the selection criteria for the scholarship, and a little bit about the selection process itself. So what are we looking for in a successful applicant? We're looking first of all at excellence, and this means academic excellence, but also professional excellence. So by academic excellence, we don't necessarily mean you have to be top in every subject or be the top student when you graduate. It can also be evidenced through other things as seen there. In terms of professional excellence, this is an interesting one because, of course, if you're just still at uni and you're about to finish up your undergrad, you won't have that same level of professional experience that someone who's 4 or 5 years out. That's fine. What we're looking for in that case is evidence of involvement in a kind of, perhaps in the student setting, where you've been involved in kind of sort of semi-professional activities. It might be presentations that you've given, that kind of thing. Moving to leadership, and it's a little bit similar in that if you're a relatively recent graduate, you won't have as much leadership experience under your belt as someone who's 4 or 5 years out of university. So again, what we're looking for there might be things like mentorship. You've been doing some mentoring, or you've been running a volunteer organisation in the community, or you've led a student group, something along those lines. So those would be examples if you don't have that sort of more professional leadership. But the other thing I would say about leadership is we're looking for that sort of community engagement. So it's great if you've shown leadership if you are 5 years out or 10 years out of uni. Fantastic if you've got that leadership in your role in a formal sense. Maybe you're a manager, but you want to think about also the other opportunities that you've taken for leadership throughout your career and throughout your study. Okay, and citizenship really speaks to that point that we've discussed already, that notion of a contribution to a better Australia and your career trajectory. So, okay, you're applying for this scholarship. What is doing this amazing overseas study right now at this institution, how is that going to be the springboard for you for your high impact career and your sort of positive benefit to Australia? As well, we're looking for a well thought through case for choosing the university. So you really need to be doing your research. Okay. I'm having trouble progressing my slides. Let's just try. Okay, nuts and bolts of the selection process. So we would expect possibly 350 applications or more this year. Applications close at 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on the 1st of July. Interviews are held nationally in August and September. So in most state and territory capitals, and also online. The national interviews are held in Sydney and Melbourne in October. And so in our state interviews, roughly 100 will do that first level of interview. And then from there, 40 will be chosen to go to national. And then from there, we select 10 to 20 scholars. And those offers are made early November, late October or thereabouts. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about this. I will just touch briefly on the application. It's a very, very involved application. And I'm sure, Matt, you're going to talk about that in a few moments. So if you haven't started your application already and haven't looked at what's there, I strongly suggest you do, because you need to know the amount of work that goes into it. It's not something to treat lightly, and as you can understand, it's a significant scholarship. So it's a significant application. So we ask a little bit about yourself, your background, what your personal journey has been. There's quite a detailed academic summary that you have to put together. We're looking for, we call them essays almost, but a list of professional experience, but also then speaking to your experience and your leadership and community engagement and impact. So there are what you might call short essay sections in the application. The point there is personal statements. It's those are the statements around all those different elements. And you have to have 3 referees. And again, if you are serious about applying, I would strongly suggest that you be thinking right now about your referees and be reaching out to them, because often referees, they're really busy people, happy to help, but they want to know sooner rather than later. Okay, this section is nearly done. I just wanted to give you a couple of tips on applying. And as I said, we'll be drilling down into this a little bit more in the next session. So as I've said, start early, really, really essential. Get guidance and get input from your mentors, from colleagues. Use your networks and really try and understand, talk to people who might have been through the same process. Really think carefully about your referees. You need people that know who you are, know how you perform. Normally we would suggest that, well, you need referees essentially who can speak to your ability to fulfill the selection criteria. So your professional academic excellence, your leadership potential or demonstrated leadership, and your citizenship. You need people that can speak to all those things. Do your research universities, research widely. Highly, highly recommend that. Also consider your plan B. It's really not uncommon for successful scholars to, so they win the scholarship, and because of the timelines, I've already referred to those, they may not actually get into their proposed institution. Now that is fine, but we strongly suggest that you be considering what your plan B might be. Be yourself, and that applies, of course, to the written application, but also the interviews. We want to see who you are. Our scholars are fantastic people, and we want to see, we just want to know you a little bit through your application. This is now getting to the really basic stuff, but please read the instructions carefully. Do draft and redraft. Strongly recommend you do your drafts in Word and then put them into the application. Don't write straight into the application. Please proofread. And nothing detracts more from an application than typos and layout issues. In terms of the deadline, we strongly recommend that you try and submit a week before the deadline. Don't leave it to the last minute. Now, I'll tell you why this is. If you can imagine, we might have 350 very excited applicants all wanting to submit their application by 5 o'clock on the 1st of July. Now, if even half of those or a quarter of those people wait until 4:30, for example, you can just imagine what that is going to do to our application system. It's going to seize up, it might crash, it can cause no end of grief. So please consider getting in your application as early as you can. Okay, now before we introduce Matt, I might again just go to you, Paul, and see if there are any other questions that we need to speak to.
Thanks very much, Anna. We've had a busy chat room, and I'm going to ask Karen to just briefly mention the sort of questions that are being asked about PhDs. Just looking thematically, there are questions on referees, and we've given answers on that. And I'd probably make the point that, your referees will know generally what to write. And in fact, they shouldn't be too guided on what to say. Let them be genuine in talking about your academic performance, the type of person you are, how you've demonstrated leadership, anything that you think that will play to your advantage. But that they will do that for you. It's more important to select wisely and brief them about what you're trying to achieve. So they're right across that. I think there were questions about is the $80,000 reviewed every year, etc. It's reviewed periodically. It's just been reviewed recently. We do take into account cost of living pressures and other things, but a key factor in this is that funding from the John Monash Foundation is a contribution to your total costs as a student who has a dream to study overseas. In some circumstances, it won't cover everything, and this is part of your planning, part of your budget, part of your success story that you will need to articulate. And you'll find that generally with most scholarships as well. So I'll leave that there, and I'll just invite Karen to comment on PhD questions in particular and anything in regard to the Academy.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, I'll take the PhD one. Anna, one you might want to jump in on. There's quite a few questions around the format for the referees in terms of if it's a letter or how long it needs to be. So maybe you can take that one in a second. We've had a few around PhDs. So we're not expecting that you have a detailed outline of what your research would look like during that PhD, or that you've necessarily locked in a supervisor or supervisors. What we would be looking to see is that you've thought through where you're going, which institution that you've chosen, and really this is about why that degree and why that institution. So there needs to be a match. So if you're seeking to do research in a certain field, you should be seeking out where are the best experts globally that you can go and work with. So you need to be able to sort of say, this is clearly the area I want to go into. It doesn't have to be the specifics of what the project will be, but the area that you would like to go into. So you could talk about in broad terms what sort of research you would like to do, but you don't have to have your individual hypotheses and everything mapped out. But then who are you identifying as potential supervisors? And bearing in mind that you're applying for the scholarship ahead of being accepted into these institutions, you should be looking at multiple supervisors on the off chance that the first one is not available. Sometimes there are caps on how many PhD students a supervisor can take. So think through the broad area. You need to be able to demonstrate, as I said, why this degree and why that university. There needs to be a connection that's clearly there. Yeah. Anna, the referees one?
Yes, I've got the chat up now, so I'll just kind of scroll through that. So someone sort of referred to that they're not sure what they should ask their referees to write. I think, Paul, you spoke to that, but you know, they'll receive a notification from us, and you know, it will be of their choosing how they approach it. We're not prescriptive about how long the letter is. I can see there's a point there. But, you know, I guess as with any application, you know, they'll be thinking about the criteria as should you. So, okay, someone's asked about is the online application something you can look at and come back to later? Yes, absolutely. So you can log in, create, you know, set up your account and then go backwards and forwards. Should the referees be speaking to my character? And that's also, there was another question about, you know, academic versus non-academic. I think a mix, and yes, I mean, it's that would be part of it, the character aspect.
Just a question there, Anna.
Yeah.
The applicant, of course, can come in and out of the portal. What about referees? How does the referee submit, and how many times can they look at it?
Yeah, sure. That's a good question. So the way that works is once you're ready to do that section, and in fact, you don't have to be sequential when you're doing your application. Once you log in, you'll see there's a dashboard and you can jump around. So have a look at the referee section. So you basically submit name and contact details of your referees, and that will then straight away trigger an email to that person who will be asked to submit a reference. So that will come to us as part of the application. So you don't get to see the reference that is submitted as part of your overall application. So one of the things I might just add to that around the referees is you really need to be monitoring whether they've submitted them or not. So you'll be able to see in your dashboard whether they have actually submitted or not. And it's really useful for you to consider following up with them. Of course, some of them are very, very busy, eminent people, but it's really important that you respectfully go back to them. If you can see the deadline coming up and they haven't got onto it and they've had several weeks, you really need to prompt them. That is absolutely not something that we can assist with. So you need to engage with your referees and make sure that they are completing the references. Question about how long the referee letters should be. We're not prescriptive about that at all.
Just jumping in there, Anna, as well, is just a point of clarity. There's been a useful exchange, and thanks to Stephanie, but just a point of clarification is applications close firmly at 5 p.m. on July 1, and that is Australian Eastern Standard Time. So if you're applying from overseas, please keep in mind the deadline close date in Australia, in an Australian time. Very important. But, you know, within all of that, get your application in early. Our strong advice would be don't leave it till the end. Get it in at least a week before. Feel good about it. Know that you've done it, and then it'll be ready to be processed. That's our advice.
Thanks, Paul. Yes, and thanks, Stephanie, for that pick up there. That's a little strange, but we'll have a look at that date glitch. I think that's everything about the referee. I'm not sure the question about can the referee come backwards and forwards. Look, they just get an email, so they get an email and then they click on the link and do it that way. Who sits on the review panels? Look, we have a real range of people. Obviously people who are extremely expert in their own chosen fields and professionally with distinguished professional careers. it's very broad. We get a range of disciplines and backgrounds. We have people from corporate, from government, from academia. Paul, did you want to add anything else to that around the panels?
We're very lucky. The Foundation is extremely lucky to have leading Australians from multiple fields who give up their time to join interview panels across the country in every state, every territory. And we're deeply honoured by that. And every year we don't have a problem filling these panels because they fundamentally believe in this mission we have to create the next generation of leaders. But what we do, as Anna's saying, is we take a lot of care in terms of the skills mix on each panel so that each panel is able to deal with, whether it's law or medicine or engineering or many of the other fields that come up. We feel that we have a group that can consider every application on merit.
Fantastic. Thanks, Paul. And look, I think we'll draw this part to a close because I'm conscious that it will be fantastic for you to hear from Matt. The last question there about referee from an overseas university. Yep, that's fine. If you think that is the right referee for you for this application, then yes, that's fine. Okay, so look, I think we might jump to Matt now. It's fantastic to have you. I think it's probably quite early in the morning in London. So Matt, we sort of talked about what you might want to say. I'm sure you've got plenty to say, and I talked about your experiences and your leadership. The other thing you might want to finish with is any advice that you can give prospective applicants as well. So I'll just hand over to you, and thanks so much for coming. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, good morning all. Thank you, Anna, and good to see you both, Karen and Paul, and also good to see so many people dialing in for this webinar. Good morning from the UK. Really big pleasure to be with you all to talk about the John Monash Scholarship, and something that I think fundamentally has changed my life and something that I think many other scholars would echo. I guess it's kind of like answering an essay question in the sense that everything that has been said throughout this webinar so far, like listen to it and apply it directly, because they're not trying to confuse you. These are things which you should address directly in your application, whether it is the selection criteria or even the tips that are on the screen now. These are things that will advantage you in all stages of the application process. So the more you think about those and apply those to your application, I would strongly encourage you to do so. I was thinking after Anna messaged me yesterday with some key points to talk about. I think that the John Monash Scholarship for me was life-changing for three quite important ways. The first was providing funding to do my study. Without that funding, I couldn't be here in Oxford right now doing my Master of Public Policy. So by virtue of being selected for the scholarship, it meant that I could be here surrounded by world-leading individuals who are in my cohort, but also the professors and teachers who I have on a daily basis. The second thing, which cannot be understated by any measure, is the belonging to the network of individuals who are scholars themselves. Unlike, I think, other scholarships that exist both in Australia and around the world, the heart of the John Monash Scholarship is that we are about collaboration between scholars for life and for the benefit of Australia. And I think that that's really important. And it's not something which is trivial or said in a very kind of highfalutin way. It is something which is substantial and in practice every single day. Scholars on a daily basis are interacting and talking about the big and crunchy issues that are facing not only Australia, but the world, and how we can play a role in that, whether it's in medicine, whether it's in law. People are world leading in terms of regulation in artificial intelligence. And I think that even though these disciplines may not be my own, it shows how I can have an interdisciplinary contribution to these discussions and how we can all contribute to these problems. So I think that unlike other scholarships, like I said, that is something which distinguishes the John Monash community amongst others in Australia more broadly. And I think the third thing which receipt of the scholarship did for me was provide me with the self-belief and confidence that I could make that difference. As quite a rigorous selection process, it was important, I think, at the back end to say, having gone through both the written application and a number of interview selection processes, that I was chosen for for some reason, and that reason was because people saw that I could make a difference and have an impact. So I think since being awarded the scholarship a couple of years ago, I've been able to jump on that path and say, you know what, I do want to make a very solid contribution, not only through my studies, but what I want to do when I come back to Australia upon completion. A couple of extra points that I've kind of noted down here since Anna's been talking, and I think that they're very relevant. The first one with regards to referees, is also fundamental to the success of the application, I think, because it's the only part of the application that you don't control yourself. Whereas the scholarship application deadline closes on the 1st of July, I remember I told my referees that they had 2 weeks prior to that to submit it so that I could chase them up and have it definitely locked in. I didn't tell them when it was actually due, but I wanted to make sure that in my own mind that they had it submitted. So if you need to kind of micromanage your referees, I strongly recommend you do that, because you don't want to be there on the afternoon of the 1st of July realizing that one of your referees hasn't submitted and they're away from their desktop for the rest of the afternoon. The second thing I would say is that be very deferent to the selection criteria, and the scholarship foundation is not trying to trick you in telling you what they are. If you can demonstrate throughout your application consistently your leadership, your citizenship, and your academic excellence, I think that puts you in good stead to be reviewed favourably in the first stage and then subsequent stages of the selection process. And if you can have a clear idea of how you do want to make that difference and can answer the questions that are provided throughout the written application, again, that puts you in good stead for your selection. I would also say between now and when selections are due, ask as many questions as you can in forums like this, emailing the foundation as much as they might not like me saying bombard them with emails, but now is the time to ask questions. I'm sure that many scholars as well would be more than happy to be on the receiving end of a message from you should you find someone who is in a related field. If you find me on LinkedIn and want to have a chat about something related to my background, I'm more than happy to speak to that, because I think that we all have different tips and insights we can share, and that will only strengthen your application going forward. That's kind of it from me, Anna, unless there's other things you wanted me to address specifically or questions that people had for me that I could answer.
Thanks, Matt. That is just fantastic. Someone's put a question in the chat for you. Hi, Matt. What does the Leadership Academy look like for successful scholars before, during, and after the postgrad study? So I think what that's saying is the scholar community and the academy, perhaps during the application phase, but also during your study and after your study. So can you speak to that around the Leadership Academy itself? Perhaps at least the event that you attended last year might be an example.
Yeah, so as I said, collaboration and partnership amongst the scholars is at the heart of the John Monash Foundation. So last year in London, we held the inaugural John Monash Foundation Leadership Academy event, which brought together scholars from around the UK who are both currently studying and those who are in the professional work setting. And it was a day for us to kind of listen to what people were up to in their respective fields, and a format with which we could discuss and collaborate on some of those big issues we spoke about. So we spent an afternoon at the BCG headquarters in London, going through and discussing and debating some big issues, hearing briefs from a number of experts on big issues like climate change and migration, and looking at how we can think about the housing crisis and what that means in terms of political instability in the Western setting. So I think that is the real benefit of the foundation, and the Leadership Academy more generally brings together these kind of events. We had the symposium at the back end of last year in Sydney, which brought together hundreds of scholars from around the world for exactly the same purpose, for us to network and to collaborate and to talk to one another about how our fields are intertwined and how we can work together to achieve the mission of this foundation, which is to deliver a real and tangible benefit to the Australian people.
Thanks. That's fantastic, Matt. One other point I just wanted to pick up on, you talked about applicants reaching out to scholars, which is a great idea. And yeah, they're an amazingly generous bunch of people. So what I'd suggest there is, in the first instance, have a look at our website at the Scholar Profiles, because that's a great starting point to give you a sense of, you know, who's doing what, and you might find someone there in a related field, or just something that really intrigues you about that person and what they're doing. And then my suggestion would be, in the first instance, try reaching them on LinkedIn. Just introduce yourself and just explain you're applying, and you know, would they be open for a conversation or an email. If you can't reach them on LinkedIn, get back to us and we'll try to put you in touch with the scholar. But in the first instance, we'd ask you to reach out yourselves. So that's great, Matt. Thank you so much. Yeah, go on.
One more thing, and it's even though this is, you know, one of Australia's most eminent and prestigious scholarships, the selection process is not one that is adversarial. The scholarship and the foundation and the reviewers are not trying to catch you out. They're trying to find out more about you and confirm your passions and intentions and interests. So whilst it can be intimidating to be an applicant looking up and thinking, oh, what do I write to get, you know, selected, and how do I frame and position myself best? I think the dot point, which is I think 4th or 5th down that list on the screen right now, is probably one of the most important. It's be honest and be authentic and be genuine, and show the selection panel and show those who will be reviewing your application your authentic self, because I think that does more than you trying to tailor applications which will be best positioned to win the scholarship, but rather those who are reviewing a scholarship want to get to know you and how you're going to make a difference, and how this study will be part of that leadership journey for you.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Matt. Paul, I can see another question. Yeah, we've got that. Thanks, Karen, for answering that about the pre-departure program. Paul, did you want to jump in there with anything else? I think we're just about done for this evening, but happy to take any further comments.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. To everybody who's joined us tonight, deep appreciation from the Foundation. We really value the time you've taken to be with us. We hope you've learnt a lot. I think the very best takeaway for you is to remember what Matt said, how he said it. I made some notes myself because I thought it was excellent. And the benefits that he's obtained from being a John Monash scholar. Some people who make it all the way through the national panel and unfortunately miss out, we do say to them, don't forget to mention to people you were a finalist for a John Monash scholarship. It is that highly regarded, and it is very special in its focus on not just the academic. So the takeaway is not just the academic, but also the leadership and the citizenship within Australia. And I love the way Matt kind of gave us his own sort of self-reflection on how self-belief started and came for him, and how he came to realise that he really, really could make that contribution, and he developed a passion to make that contribution. And that for us is the heart of being a John Monash scholar. So thank you, Matt, and thank you, Anna. Thank you, everybody who's joined tonight. And we'd very much hope you're going to get an application in. And for those with more questions, please join us on June 4. And again, another takeaway from Matt is reach out to as many scholars as you like, ask questions, get involved. The more you talk about it, the more you learn, the stronger your application is going to be. So thank you very much from me.
Thank you so much, Paul. I'll just wrap up quickly, a couple more questions. I don't want to keep anyone too much longer. The one question about how much detail is recommended to be included, I'm just going to say there, we can't be prescriptive. So, you know, that's really your decision. And but you know, you can try it out on someone else in terms of the detail and so on. The scholarship is paid out in 6 monthly instalments. You can access the recording on our website. So go back to the page where you access the registration. Generally, end of October, early November is when you'll find out about the scholarship. next webinar. Thank you so much, Karen. And I think we'll call it a day there. Thank you so much, everyone, for spending this time with us. And we look forward to hearing from you. And a huge thanks to you, Matt and Karen and Paul as well.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone. See you
Thanks,
later.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good luck, everyone.